I walked into my bedroom with a sense of routine, expecting to see everything exactly where I had left it. My jewelry box sat on the dresser, polished by years of careful hands. For decades, it had been my private vault, a small sanctuary where I kept pieces of my past, fragments of a life lived and loved. I opened the lid, my fingers brushing the familiar velvet lining. But the moment my eyes landed on the empty space, my breath caught. The ring was gone. My wedding ring. The only treasure that truly mattered. The last piece of my husband's love I still carried with me. At first, I thought I had misplaced it. I searched the drawers, the floor, even my bed. My heart raced faster with every second that passed. The house felt colder. The walls seemed to close in, and I whispered to myself, no, not that ring. It can't be gone. My chest tightened as if the air itself refused to fill my lungs. I rushed to the living room, trembling, clutching the jewelry box as if it could demand the truth. For me, my daughter sat calmly on the couch, scrolling through her phone with an indifferent expression. I asked her, almost pleading, where the ring was. For a brief moment, silence filled the space between us. She didn't look up right away. She simply sighed, almost annoyed, and then, with a voice colder than I ever imagined from my own child, she said the words that shattered my heart. I sold it. The room seemed to vanish. My ears rang, my knees weakened, and the jewelry box nearly slipped from my hands. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was a cruel joke. But there was no remorse in her eyes, no guilt. She only repeated herself as if it were nothing. I sold it. I needed the money. I couldn't believe it. My wedding ring, the symbol of the life I had built with her father. The promises, the vows, the laughter, and the tears. It wasn't just gold. It was memory, and she had traded it away. I tried to speak, but the words refused to leave my throat. I could only whisper, "Why? How could you?" She shrugged, her tone detached. "It was just a ring. You have plenty of jewelry. I thought you wouldn't even notice. Just a ring." To her, it was nothing. To me, it was everything. My mind spun back to the day my husband slipped it onto my finger. His eyes filled with love and devotion. The trembling in his hand as he promised forever. That circle of gold carried his voice, his warmth, his spirit. It was not just an ornament, it was the living heartbeat of our past, and now, gone. Sold to a stranger who would never know its worth. I felt my chest cave under the weight of betrayal. This was not about money, not about material possession. It was about trust, respect, and the sacred memory of the man I loved. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from the one person I had given everything to, my daughter. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her until she understood the pain she had caused. But all I could do was sit there, my hands trembling, staring at the void she had left inside me. And in that silence, in that hollow space, I knew she had no idea what she had truly sold that day. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful stories to life. And now, I need to ask you something. If you were in my place, facing a betrayal so deep it stripped away not just an object, but a memory, would you forgive? Or would this moment transform the way you see love, trust, and family forever? Share your thoughts below. Your perspective might inspire someone who needs the courage to reclaim their own story. My name is Eleanor, and I am 76 years old. People look at me and see a fragile old woman, someone whose days are spent in silence and routine. But I am not fragile. and I am not empty. Every wrinkle on my face carries a story. Every scar in my heart proves I have lived a life that demanded strength. I am a widow, a woman who once knew what it was to be loved so deeply that the world seemed brighter just because of his presence. I am the keeper of memories that younger generations will never understand. And above all, I am the woman who wore a simple golden ring that meant far more than any jewel on this earth. That ring was not merely metal, it was the symbol of everything my late husband and I built together. When he placed it on my finger, I was only a young woman filled with dreams. We had nothing but hope and love, no wealth, no status, only the courage to face life hand in hand. He promised me forever, and that promise was sealed in that circle of gold. It wasn't expensive. It didn't shine brighter than others, but to me, it was priceless. It was him, his voice, his vows, his devotion. That is who I am, a woman who lived a love story worth more than diamonds, and that is why losing that ring cut into my soul like a knife. I remember the day he proposed as if it happened yesterday. The sky was gray, rain threatened to fall, and he nervously held out that little box. His hands trembled, not from fear of rejection, but from the weight of his own feelings. When I said yes, he slid the ring onto my finger, and for the first time in my life, I understood what eternity felt like. From that moment on, it was no longer a piece of gold. It was our life, our bond, our promise that no matter what storms came, we would stand together. For decades, every time I looked at it, I saw his face. That ring became the bridge that connected me to him, even after death claimed him. Being 76 means I have outlived many of my friends, many of my dreams, even my health at times. But the love I shared with my husband still breathed through that ring. When I held it, I could close my eyes and hear his laugh. I could feel his hand in mine, smell the faint scent of his cologne, remember the sound of his voice whispering my name. That ring was my anchor in a world that had grown colder and emptier since he left. Without it, I am forced to confront the painful truth of his absence all over again. And yet, to my daughter, it meant nothing. To her, it was just an object, something to be traded for money, something to be dismissed as old and meaningless. She looked at me as though I was clinging to the past, as though my memories were burdens that didn't deserve respect. She didn't see the decades carved into that circle of gold. She didn't hear her father's words echoing through it. She only saw chance to buy gifts for a man who could never give her the kind of devotion her father gave me. That is the contrast that defines this betrayal. I gave her life. I gave her sleepless nights, years of sacrifice, every ounce of love I could muster. And yet she grew blind to the one thing that still kept me alive, my memories. When she sold that ring, she didn't just sell jewelry. She sold trust. She sold dignity. She sold the last tangible piece of the man who built this family with me. And when she looked at me and said, "It was just a ring," she reduced not only my treasure, but my very life story into nothing. At 76, you see the world differently. You know that betrayal from strangers is painful, but betrayal from blood is unbearable. She may think I am weak, that my age makes me powerless, but I am not powerless. I am Eleanor. I have endured grief. I have survived loss, and I know the weight of love in a way she may never understand. She thought she sold gold, but she sold something far greater. She sold history. She sold the essence of who I am. And so I ask you, if you were in my place, see if your child treated your most sacred memory as if it were worthless, would you forgive them? Or would that moment ignite a fire inside you, transforming you into someone who refuses ever again to be dismissed, silenced, or reduced? Share your thoughts below, because your words might be the strength another soul needs to find their own voice in the face of betrayal. When I confronted my daughter about the missing ring, I still held on to the fragile hope that there had been a misunderstanding. I wanted to believe that maybe she had hidden it somewhere safe, or that perhaps it had slipped behind a drawer without her noticing. But when the truth came from her own lips, I felt something inside me fracture. She didn't even hesitate, didn't stumble over her words. She looked me directly in the eye, her face calm, and said, "I sold it. I needed money to buy something for Daniel, her boyfriend, a man she had known for less than 2 years. And in her twisted logic, pleasing him outweighed preserving the last living piece of my husband's love. I remember my breath catching, my heart hammering against my chest as though it wanted to escape. My knees weakened, and I gripped the arm of the chair to keep from collapsing. My mind could not process the words. She sold it for him, for some gifts, for fleeting smiles from a man who had contributed nothing to the foundation of our family. I had thought betrayal was the theft itself, but no, the true betrayal came in her excuse. She had not stolen to survive. She had not pawned it to pay for food or rent. She sold my wedding ring to impress a man, and in that moment, I realized the depth of her indifference toward me, her father, and the love that ring represented. She said it again, as if repetition would soften the blow. "It was just a ring, Mom. Daniel deserved something special, and you have other jewelry. You wouldn't even miss it. Just a ring." Those 3 words cut deeper than any knife ever could. To her, it was a meaningless trinket. To me, it was the essence of my marriage. The final vow I carried after death stole my husband away. My daughter's voice was flat, almost impatient, as though she was tired of my silence, as though my grief was an inconvenience to her life, and that indifference hurt more than the theft itself. My mind raced back to the day I received that ring. I was only 23 then, standing under a sky painted with orange and gold. My husband's hands shook as he held the small velvet box. We had nothing, no money, no certainty, only love, but when he slid that simple golden band onto my finger, the world seemed complete. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Forever, Eleanor, no matter what comes." That moment lived inside me for decades, replaying each time I looked at my hand. That small band was not just gold. It was a living memory, a constant reminder that I had once been deeply loved. And now, my own daughter had sold it like it was a used piece of furniture. I wanted to scream at her, to make her understand the magnitude of what she had done. Didn't she see that she had stripped me of more than metal? Didn't she know she had ripped away the only physical reminder I had of her father's promises? But she sat there, arms folded, her lips curling in annoyance at my tears. "You're overreacting, Mom," she said. "You need to let go of the past. Daniel makes me happy. Isn't that what matters?" Her words burned. She had traded history for vanity, devotion for temporary pleasure. She had chosen to dismiss the foundation of her own existence in favor of pleasing someone who hadn't carried her through sleepless nights, hadn't worked himself to exhaustion to provide for her future, hadn't stood in front of God and vowed to protect her family until his last breath. My husband had done all of that, and now the symbol of his sacrifice was gone because she wanted to play the part of a generous girlfriend. I felt betrayed twice over. First, because she had stolen what was mine. Second, because she felt no guilt, no recognition of the weight of her actions. It wasn't only that she didn't value the ring, it was that she didn't value me, her father, or the love that had given her life. I was invisible in her eyes, reduced to a woman clinging to outdated relics. She didn't realize that by dismissing the ring, she dismissed the very story of who she was. My chest ached as I whispered to myself, it wasn't the gold she stole, it was my memory. Those words echoed in my head like a truth I wished I could escape, but couldn't. My daughter hadn't just taken an object. She had ripped open a wound that had barely healed since the day I buried my husband. She had proven, in the coldest way possible, that the bond I thought we shared meant little compared to the shallow validation she sought from a man. And while she might think time would make me forget, I knew this moment would remain carved into my heart forever. And so, I ask you, if the person you sacrificed your life for, the one you raised with every ounce of love in your body, dismissed your most sacred memory as worthless, what would you do? Would you forgive them? Or would you let that betrayal transform you, ignite a fire inside that demands recognition, dignity, and respect? Tell me in the comments, because your answer might be the very spark another soul needs to reclaim their strength after being broken. After the day my daughter confessed what she had done, the house no longer felt like home. I walked through its rooms, each corner echoing with memories that pressed down on me like invisible weights. The walls that once carried laughter now carried silence. Every chair, every photograph, every book on the shelf reminded me of the man I had lost and the daughter who had betrayed me. But what haunted me most was the absence of that ring, the empty space on my finger that I could not stop staring at. I would wake in the morning and instinctively reach for it, only to remember it was gone. The emptiness of that gesture broke me more than words can describe. Living without my husband had already been a trial of endurance. Each day without him was a small act of survival, but the ring had always made it bearable. It was the tangible piece of him I could still touch. Without it, I felt like he had died a second time. That is the cruel truth of loss. It doesn't kill you all at once. It kills you in fragments, over and over again. And now, my daughter had taken away the last piece of him I had left. I tried to speak to her, tried to make her understand, but she brushed me off. Days passed, and her indifference grew sharper. She avoided me, never meeting my eyes, as if pretending the issue didn't exist would erase it. She came and went as she pleased, her life revolving around her boyfriend, her friends, her own shallow desires. When she did look at me, it was with impatience, as if my grief annoyed her, as if she wished I would simply stop talking about something she considered insignificant. Each time she dismissed me, the distance between us grew wider, until I felt as though I were living with a stranger. Loneliness crept into every part of my day. I sat in the living room, staring at the ticking clock, wondering how time could move so slowly when my life felt like it was slipping away so fast. I cooked meals for one and left her plate untouched when she didn't bother to come home. I walked past the photographs of my wedding day, the ones where I stood with him, my smile wide, my eyes bright with hope. I would press my hand against the glass, whispering, "I still remember, love. I still remember everything." And in my mind, I imagined his voice answering me back. At night, when the silence became unbearable, I spoke to him as though he were still here. I told him about the betrayal, about the emptiness, about how much it hurt to be discarded, not by strangers, but by our own child. I told him I was tired of being strong, tired of pretending I was unshaken. I whispered into the darkness, "What would you say to her if you were here? Would you be able to make her see what she has done? Or would you hold me and remind me that we were enough, even if she never understands?" In those quiet conversations, I could almost hear him, the sound of his laugh, the firmness in his voice, the warmth of his embrace. But when I opened my eyes, I was still alone, and the ache in my chest deepened. That is the cruelty of memory. It keeps the dead alive in your heart while reminding you, every single second, that they are gone. The silence was worse than the theft itself. The theft was quick, a single moment that took something irreplaceable. But the silence lingered, day after day, gnawing at me, eroding my spirit. Silence has a way of making betrayal louder, of amplifying every unanswered question, every tear that falls unnoticed. I could endure hunger, pain, even sickness, but the silence of being dismissed by your own child is unbearable. And yet, as the days passed, I noticed something undeniable. My daughter's life went on effortlessly. She laughed on the phone, planned outings with her boyfriend, carried shopping bags into the house without a trace of shame. She never once mentioned the ring again, as if erasing it from her thoughts would erase it from existence. That indifference cut deeper than the theft. It told me that my pain was irrelevant to her, that my memories were disposable. She walked around as though she had done nothing wrong, while I sat with a hollow chest, replaying every memory of the man who had loved me so fiercely. I looked at her and wondered where I had gone wrong. How had I raised a child so blind to the value of love, so eager to replace history with vanity? I thought of the nights I held her as a baby, the sacrifices I made to give her a better life, the countless times I put her happiness above my own. And for what? For her to trade my memories for fleeting approval from a man. It was not just a betrayal, it was a declaration that I no longer mattered. The void inside me was not only the absence of the ring, it was the absence of respect, the absence of recognition, the absence of the bond I thought could never be broken. And as I sat in the silence of my home, speaking to a man who would never answer again, I began to wonder if, perhaps, the betrayal had freed me from an illusion. Maybe the daughter I thought I had never truly existed. Maybe I had loved an image of her, one I created in my mind, but the reality was something far colder. I whispered to him still, to the husband who cannot answer. I tell him I am trying to survive, that I am trying to carry our love even as our child discards it. I ask him if he can see me, if he knows that I am still fighting to keep his memory alive. And deep inside, I know that while the silence of betrayal is unbearable, it also reveals a truth people rarely admit. Sometimes those we love most are the very ones who teach us how cruel the world can be. So I ask you, if you were sitting in my place, surrounded by silence so heavy it drowns out your heartbeat, watching the person you gave everything to walk away without remorse, how would you endure it? Would you let the silence break you, or would you let it shape you into someone unshakable, someone who turns betrayal into strength? Share your answer below, because your story might be the light that helps another lost soul find a way through their own darkness. There is something my daughter never knew about that ring, something I never shared with anyone except the man who placed it on my finger all those years ago. To her, it was nothing more than a piece of gold, a trinket she could exchange for money. To me, it was not just a symbol of marriage, not just a reminder of vows spoken in a trembling voice. It was the keeper of a secret, the last whisper of a man who knew his time on this earth was limited. That is why the pain of losing it felt unbearable. Because what she sold was not just jewelry. She sold his voice. She sold his presence. She sold the only message he left behind for me. I remembered the night he told me about it. He had grown weaker then, his breath shorter, his hands colder. We both knew what we never dared to say out loud. That time was slipping away from us. I was sitting beside him, holding his hand, when he looked at me with eyes filled with both fear and tenderness. He reached for my ring finger, caressed the band, and whispered words that have haunted me ever since. If one day I'm gone, this ring will still speak for me. At first, I didn't understand. I thought it was a metaphor, a poetic way of saying his love would always stay with me. But then he explained. Inside that simple band of gold, hidden where no one could see, was a recording. He had it, made quietly, long before his illness took him. A small, delicate engraving concealed a micro device. Nothing grand, nothing expensive, just a simple message stored in metal. His voice, his goodbye, his love. He never told anyone else, not even our daughter, because he wanted it to be ours alone. He wanted me to carry him with me in a way no one else could touch. That secret made the ring more than gold. It made it his eternal presence. For years after his death, I never dared to open it. Never dared to listen. I didn't need to. I could feel him with me, just knowing it was there. The knowledge that his words were locked safely within that band gave me strength. On nights when grief suffocated me, I would hold the ring and whisper back, I know you are here. I know you never left me. The ring became my silent companion, the bridge between life and death. And that is what she sold for a handful of money and fleeting affection from a man who will never understand what real love means. She thought she sold gold, but she sold my last connection to her father. She sold the voice of the man who raised her, who worked until his body broke down to give her a future. She sold the very essence of the person who sacrificed everything so she could stand where she is today. She looked at that ring and saw nothing but an object. I looked at it and saw the soul of my marriage, the echo of my husband's promises, the anchor that held me through the years of loneliness after he was gone. I still remember the last time I saw him alive. His hand trembling as he reached for mine, his eyes searching for reassurance, even as his strength faded. He pressed my hand, kissed the ring on my finger, and whispered, "It will always be me. Whenever you need me, listen to the ring." That memory is carved into me like fire. And now, knowing it is gone, knowing someone out there may be holding it without the faintest idea of what it contains, tears at me in ways words cannot describe. It feels like he has been silenced forever, as though his last gift has been stripped from me and discarded like trash. I walk through the house and hear his laughter in my mind, imagine his footsteps in the hall. But when I reach for the ring and find nothing, the illusion collapses. I tell myself the memory is still mine, that no one can take that from me. And yet, the weight of betrayal tells me otherwise. Because what hurts most is not that the world stole him from me once, but that my own daughter stole him from me a second time. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know the secret, but ignorance does not erase damage. She broke something that can never be repaired. I find myself whispering to him in the dark, asking if he can still hear me, if his words are lost forever. I ask him if he knew she would do this, if he foresaw how blind she would be to what mattered. I imagine his answer, calm, patient, filled with the same unshakable love he always had. Eleanor, I can almost hear him say, the ring was only a vessel. My love was never trapped in gold. It lives in you. But still, I long to hear his actual voice, the real recording he left for me, the proof that even death could not silence him. That is what she sold. That is what I lost. And so I sit here, carrying the unbearable weight of knowing that the last treasure of my husband's voice now belongs to strangers who will never understand its worth. They will look at it, polish it, maybe melt it down, and never know that within it lies the heartbeat of a man's final devotion. And the one who should have protected it, our own daughter, was the one who handed it away without hesitation. So I ask you, if the person you trusted most dismissed not only your love but the very voice of the one you lost, what would you do? Would you crumble beneath the weight of silence? Or would you let that betrayal carve a new strength inside you? A strength that refuses to let your memories be silenced ever again? Tell me your answer below, because your voice might be the reminder someone else needs to rise above their own loss and claim their story back. After the storm of grief and betrayal, something inside me refused to stay broken. For days, I had wandered the house like a ghost, replaying my daughter's words over and over in my mind. But the more I thought about what she had done, the more a new kind of fire began to rise within me. Pain has a way of stripping illusions away, and in the ashes of what she destroyed, I remembered something that gave me strength. I had not been as careless with that ring as she assumed. She thought she had erased his voice from my life forever. But what she never knew was that long ago, I had prepared for this very possibility. I can still recall the night my husband entrusted me with the truth about the recording. He looked at me with such seriousness that I felt the weight of eternity in his eyes. Eleanor, he whispered, life has a way of taking what we treasure most. Promise me that you will never put all of yourself in one place. Protect what matters, so that even if the world is cruel, you will never be left with nothing. Those words planted themselves deep inside me. I promised him that I would honor his wisdom, and I kept that promise. Not long after he passed, when the loneliness became unbearable, I had the recording copied, quietly, privately, without telling anyone. I kept the copies hidden where no greedy hand could touch them. My daughter thought she had destroyed the last piece of him, but she was wrong. Still, before remembering that safety, I tried to find the original. I couldn't let it go without a fight. I forced myself to leave the house, walking into the biting air of the city, my heart pounding as I approached the pawn shops that reeked of desperation and loss. I pushed open the doors, clutching an old photograph of the ring in my hand, and begged the shopkeepers to tell me if they had seen it. Most shook their heads. Some glanced at me with pity. One man told me it had already been sold to another buyer, someone he could not name. Each answer was another stab to my chest, another reminder that once something sacred leaves your hands, the world does not care about its meaning. The world only cares about price tags. I walked home with trembling legs, the streets blurring through my tears. For a moment, I felt like a fool, like a weak old woman chasing ghosts that would never return. But when I stepped into the silence of my house, when I looked at the photographs of my husband and felt the hollowness pressing down on me, I remembered my promise. I remembered that I was not powerless, not as long as I had been wise enough to prepare. My hands shook as I went to the drawer hidden beneath the old wooden chest in my room. Inside, wrapped in a cloth worn thin by time, were the copies. Small, fragile, but alive with his voice. The moment I touched them, the grief that had been crushing me shifted. I sat there holding them, whispering, "She didn't win. You are still here." My husband's foresight and my own caution had protected me from losing him completely. The knowledge filled me with a strength I had forgotten I had. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt taller, stronger, unbreakable. Yes, she had taken the original, but she had not taken the essence. She had not silenced him, and that realization changed everything. Looking at my daughter, I realized she had underestimated me all along. To her, I was just an aging mother, weak and sentimental, clinging to relics. But what she failed to see is that survival teaches you to prepare. Love teaches you to protect. Wisdom teaches you to never leave your soul exposed to the cruelty of others. I was not careless. I was not naive. I had lived long enough to know betrayal comes from where you least expect it, and I had prepared myself for the storm. I watched her strut through the house with her bags, laughing on the phone with her boyfriend, never once looking back at me, never once considering what she had destroyed. She thought she had taken everything. She thought she had silenced her father's memory. But inside, I smiled with a strength she couldn't see, because what she didn't know was that the power was still mine. I still had his voice. I still had his message. She had stolen metal, but I kept the treasure. And that is the truth people often forget. The strongest among us are not the ones who never lose, but the ones who prepare for loss and still rise after it happens. Preparation is not fear. Preparation is wisdom. Preparation is love turned into protection. My daughter thought she had ended the story, but in reality, she had only proven that I was stronger than she could ever imagine. So I ask you, if life stripped you of what you hold most sacred, would you crumble and surrender, or would you stand tall, knowing you had prepared your soul against betrayal? Share your answer below, because your words may awaken someone else's courage to turn their pain into unshakable strength. I sat in silence for a long time, holding the copies of his voice in my hands, feeling their weight press against my skin like something sacred. My daughter had no idea that while she believed she had erased him, I had guarded him in ways her selfishness could never reach. That secret gave me strength, but it also gave me clarity. It showed me where my legacy truly belonged. Not in the hands of a daughter who could sell her father's last words for coins, but in the heart of someone who still understood what love meant. That someone was my granddaughter. She was young, yet her eyes carried the kind of innocence that had not yet been corrupted by greed. She would visit me sometimes, slipping into my room with shy smiles, asking me about the past, listening with awe as I told her stories about the man who had once filled this house with laughter. Unlike her mother, she never rolled her eyes, never dismissed my words as relics of another time. She wanted to know, she wanted to feel connected to him. And so, when I held the recording in my hands, I knew exactly what I needed to do. One evening, when the house was quiet and my daughter had gone out again to spend time with her boyfriend, I called my granddaughter into my room. She looked at me with curiosity, her little hands folded in front of her, and I asked her to sit. I placed the small device in her palms, watching as her eyes widened. "This, I whispered, "is a part of your grandfather, a part that only you and I will ever understand." She tilted her head, unsure, but when I pressed the button and his voice filled the room, the tears came instantly. His voice was soft, steady, full of the same love that had carried me through all those years. Eleanor, he said in the recording, if you are hearing this, it means I am gone. But know that I loved you until my last breath. Know that you were my life, my strength, my everything. And two, whoever listens now, carry this love forward. Never forget that love is the only legacy worth keeping. My granddaughter covered her mouth, her body trembling as she listened. She looked at me with tears streaming down her cheeks and whispered, I can hear him. I can really hear him. In that moment, I felt something break and heal all at once. The pain of betrayal was still there, but the power of legacy had risen above it. My granddaughter, with her pure heart, was now carrying him with me. The gift was no longer mine alone. It was hers too. She clutched the device against her chest as if it were the most precious treasure in the world, and I knew it was safe. For the first time since my daughter's betrayal, I felt peace. Not because the wound had vanished, but because I had redirected the love to someone worthy of receiving it. Later that night, when my daughter came home and saw her child sitting close to me, holding the device with red eyes and a trembling smile, she froze. She didn't understand at first. She asked what it was, why her daughter looked so moved. But when the voice of her father filled the air again, she turned pale. She realized what she had truly sold. The silence in the room was deafening. My daughter stood there, caught between guilt and disbelief, as her own child embraced the legacy she had tried to discard. That was her punishment, not my anger, not my words, but the undeniable truth that love cannot be erased, only transferred to hearts that are still capable of valuing it. I looked at her and said nothing. I didn't need to. The sight of her daughter crying with joy while listening to the man she herself had betrayed spoke louder than anything I could say. She had traded love for vanity, and in the end, she had lost everything. The man she tried to erase now lived more strongly than ever in the heart of the granddaughter who would never forget him. That night, when the house grew quiet again, I sat alone in my room and whispered to him. Once more, you were right, I said. Love doesn't die. It lives on. She tried to bury you, but I gave you to the one who will keep you alive. And in my heart, I knew that while betrayal had wounded me, legacy had saved me. Because that is the truth about memory, it chooses where to live. You cannot force it into the heart of someone blind to love, but you can pass it on to someone willing to carry it proudly. My granddaughter had become the guardian of our story, the living proof that what we build in love will always find its way to where it belongs. And now, I turn to you, if you were in my place. Watching one child destroy your history while another soul embraced it with reverence, what would you do? Would you keep fighting for the one who betrayed you? Or would you let go and give your legacy to the one who values it most? Share your answer below because your words might give someone else the courage to pass their love where it will never be wasted. In the quiet that followed, I sat alone, the weight of years pressing against me. But also, something greater rising inside, a strength that did not come from youth, but from faith. Life had stripped me of so much, tested me in ways I never thought I could endure, yet here I was, still standing. It is easy to think that the betrayals of others can define us, that their actions diminish who we are, but the truth is far greater. We are not defined by what is taken from us. We are defined by what we choose to hold on to, and what we choose to pass forward. My daughter took the ring, but she could not take the love. She tried to silence his voice, but she could not silence the legacy that lives in my soul and now in the heart of my granddaughter. Faith is not only about believing in what we cannot see, it is about trusting that love never dies, even when everything else is lost. I have learned that faith gives us the courage to endure what seems unbearable, to walk through fire without being consumed, to breathe even when grief suffocates. Every time I close my eyes, I hear him still, reminding me that eternity is not measured by the years we walk this earth, but by the love we leave behind. That love, rooted in faith, cannot be sold, stolen, or destroyed. It becomes light in the darkest places, and it carries us when we no longer have the strength to carry ourselves. I think often about the journey of my life, about the vows spoken when I was just a young woman trembling with hope. I remember the promises, the sacrifices, the laughter, and the tears. Too many, those moments are just fragments of the past, but to me, they are living proof that life is more than what we accumulate. It is the depth of what we give, the endurance of what we believe, and the strength of what we carry, even when no one else understands. That is faith. That is legacy. That is why, even in betrayal, I do not bow my head in defeat. My daughter's actions cut me, but they also taught me. They taught me that sometimes those we love most reveal the deepest truths about ourselves. They showed me that, even when family fails us, love can still find a way to endure through new generations, through new hearts that are open and willing to cherish it. Pain can be a teacher, betrayal can be a mirror, and silence can be a battlefield. Yet in the midst of it all, faith can lift us higher than despair. I have prayed many nights, not only for healing, but for clarity. And I realize now that forgiveness is not about excusing what was done. It is about refusing to let betrayal own you. It is about reclaiming your dignity, holding your faith like a shield, and remembering that your worth is not decided by anyone else's blindness. The Creator gave me strength to carry love through storms, to hold memory in my soul like a flame that cannot be extinguished. And I believe He will give me strength to continue to leave this world not broken, but victorious in the truth that love outlasts everything. When I look at my granddaughter, when I see her holding the recording close to her chest with tears that are pure and sincere, I know my husband's voice is still alive. He speaks through her now, through her innocence, through her understanding that love is sacred, that is legacy, that is faith at work. And it tells me that no betrayal, no matter how sharp, can destroy what is eternal. Because the things of this world will fade, but love anchored in faith will remain. I am 76 years old, and I know my days ahead are fewer than the days behind. But I no longer fear the end. I know that when my final breath comes, I will not leave empty-handed. I will leave having carried His voice, His love, and my faith through every trial. And I will leave it in the hands of someone who will not squander it, someone who will let it grow brighter, someone who will remember that love is never truly lost. That is the power of preparation, the power of faith, and the power of legacy. And now I speak to you, you who have walked through betrayal, who have felt the sting of being dismissed, who have sat in silence, wondering if your story still matters. Let me tell you this: you are stronger than you believe. Your memories are worth more than gold, and your faith can turn wounds into wisdom. Do not let anyone convince you that your life is small, that your history is meaningless. You carry treasures within you that no one can steal unless you allow them. Stand tall in that truth. Remember that you are not broken, you are living proof of survival, endurance, and love that refuses to die. So, if you felt touched by this story, if you saw yourself in my words, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your support allows us to keep bringing stories of strength, love, and faith that resonate deeply with the soul. And do not go far, because the next story will take you even deeper into the battles of the heart. A tale where the past collides with the present in ways no one could imagine. Stay with us, because what comes next might change the way you see your own life.